Hello, hello, and welcome to all of you beautiful soul sisters. Thank you for joining me here today on the Heart of the Soul podcast. My name is Amana, and I'm so happy that you're here. This is a space where we explore what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth, connecting about that which is often unseen and unspoken through the ancient ritual of storytelling. May soaking in these stories bring you closer to your own innate knowing and center you into a more embodied and alive version of your beautiful, unique self. Today's Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. The moon is currently waning towards our next new moon in Virgo on September 2nd. Today on the show, I have Kendra Perlo, and she and I met through Kimberly Ann Johnson's Jaguar and MotherCircle and the MotherCircle Facilitator training. And we've had some dialogue here and there throughout this last couple of years through that. And I'm excited to have her on the show today and share some of her soul stories with all of you. So, Kendra, I wonder if maybe you would want to take a few moments and introduce yourself further in whatever way, feels good to you.
Thank you so much, Mom, for having me here. Yes. I am Kendra. I'm 35 years old, and I was born in the mountains of New York State. A lot of people don't realize there's more than just the city in New York. And I have been living on the Caribbean coast of Colombia for about 12 years now, apprenticing the heat and the seasons that are here. I have had 2 birth experiences. I have 1 son, and mothering has really been the centering soul journey for me.
Yeah. Did you grow up as a woman who knew that you wanted to be a mom someday? Was that something that came later to you?
I always knew, I wanted to be a mother. And I'm going to invite my own mother's presence here because all of everything that we've been through, I've come to deeply appreciate the sweetness that I always remember her saying my whole life. The best days of my life were the days that I gave birth to you and to your sister. And it almost like just brings tears to my eyes, feeling that even like as a child, I was like, wow. I remember thinking like not even the day you were married, but oh, okay, like this is like a really big thing. And it was kind of just, yeah, that's what I would do. And of course, it didn't happen the way I imagined it would, but here we are.
It's true of a lot of life. We can make the plans and yet life happens. I wonder what else you might know about your own birth and emergence, as your mother spoke so fondly of that day.
Oh, I've heard this story a lot. And it was a long birth, 24 hours. And I was born in a hospital. And the thing also that was really important to my mother in telling this story was that she didn't have any drugs. And that was like really important to her. Like I did it naturally. And of course there were like other interventions and whatnot that maybe were just like too tricky for her to navigate in that time. But that was always like this source of like, I did this, like I am woman. So it was a long time, which now looking back, I'm like, of course, like there's doctors poking and prodding her, like there's the bright lights, they have her walking up and down the hallways to try to induce labor, and then eventually I come, and it's just past midnight on like what they told her was my like due date. So the joke was always like I had to come on like on the day that they said. Um, Although of course we know like that's completely random, not really a great source of information. But actually something that I had forgotten since I became a mother, and then just recently like was reminded of, was like, she was like, oh, you came out like singing, like you were like cooing and like so relaxed, like not all babies cry when they're born, you were just singing. So she was just like amazed with me and with that moment, that snowstorm 35
Mm-hmm.
years ago.
Beautiful. And is your sister older or younger than you?
Yeah, she's about 6.5 years older.
Okay. So that
Big
was,
growing up.
yeah. I was just curious if that was your mom's like first birth or, second birth, but it sounds like you were her second. Hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. And so you grew up in the US, but now you've been in Colombia. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey from the United States to Colombia and what you might want to share about that.
Yeah, I've basically been here my whole adult life. Um, I started teaching in college, and I knew that I wanted to be abroad. Um, and the opportunity of Colombia presented itself. I came with a class, and got to know the people for about a week, the place a bit, and it just felt like there's something here that is uh, fuller, that is able to hold more, um, and I'm really curious. I think it's about um, we have our kind of personal like stories and motivations, but they're of course within the context of like how empty it can feel, um, being in US culture, in the mainstream culture anyway, and like looking for community. Um, at like graduating from college, I very much wanted to like to serve and to be appreciated. And it didn't really matter kind of what exactly I was doing. I was just searching for this sort of connection that was like eluding me. Um, and I feel like I've gone a bit like
Mhm.
around, where did I want to get back to?
Was it your first like experience in a different culture coming to Colombia?
No,
No.
I studied abroad in the south of Spain, and
Hmm.
um, like been to other places, and everyone told me not to go. Everyone told me not to go, but it was this soul calling that sometimes I still don't completely understand,
Yeah.
that needed to be answered. And a lot of it is like, what are we exposed to in the US media? What are we hearing about other places and what's really going on? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it true that there was a 50-year civil war here? Absolutely. But is that like just what's happening every day, everywhere, all the time? Like, no. Even before they signed the peace treaties a couple of years back.
Mm-hmm.
So really just trying to get underneath this like fear mongering, like news reports, and to like, okay, but what are the people like? And what is the place like? And what is just everyday life like? And what can I learn from being there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can relate a lot to that in like my travels that I've done too. And I've traveled quite a bit solo and doing couch surfing and such. And I remember, yeah, when I had plans to go to Israel and people had, yeah, fears like, it's not safe there. You can't go there. You can't go there as a single woman and da 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 da. But yet I felt the call and I trusted that. So it sounds like you had a similar experience going to Colombia.
Yeah.
So once you did land in Colombia, you experienced the people and the culture.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Um, well, the first time I went, there was no direct flight from New York to Cartagena. We had to go through Bogota, and it was sort of like going to Europe. So you had to be like overnight. Um, but you get to like Bogota, I will always remember just being like, I grew up in the mountains and I love the mountains, but they're glacier carved in New York State. And there is nothing like flying over the Andes and seeing these massive snow-peaked mountains arriving like just at sunrise and then heading off to the Caribbean. I mean, Colombia is so vast. I think it's like the third most biodiverse nation on earth. So living in Cartagena is like basically living in another country from someone in Bogota. It's a completely different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And over the time I have like I had to learn a lot about like the animosities between those two peoples and how they like view each other. And over time I have come to identify a lot more with the Caribbeans. Um, there's like this down to earthness that's really helpful.
Cool. And it's there that you met the father of your children.
Yes, yes. I met Marcelo on the first trip that I took here. We kept in touch, and then I came back. We met up again, and it was maybe 3 or 4 months before we like started dating, and then eventually 2 years later we got married.
Yeah. And was that, surprising to you or him, or what was your families, or how was that experience?
Uh, it's something actually that keeps like cycling back up through my memory because of the cycles of relating that we go through having been together for so long and remembering that time. Um, just me like going towards what I wanted and focusing so much and feeling like a real settling around him.
Mm-hmm.
And like he would be kind of down for anything. Um, not intimidated by a woman who wants to have her own career and life and friends and all this stuff, which yeah, I mean, it just felt right. It also felt impossible.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was like, I can't believe that you would do this. Him just really being hurt of me being like so far, and I think just that archetypal ache of not being able to protect your daughter.
Mm.
I mean, I was like 22 when I moved here, which then doesn't feel young to us, but it's very, it's very young.
Yeah. Well, I know we have a few things that we want to get to in this hour, and that you'd like to more fully share the birth story of your second son. But I wondered if maybe you could do like like Kimberly talks about, like the book cover version of, if you would like to, of your conception and birth of your first son, that kind of lays the ground foundation for this next birth that you'd like to speak to more fully.
Yeah, it absolutely does in so many ways. And yeah, if it ends up being that each of them are balanced, that's
Yeah, okay.
fine. Destan Leon, firstborn. This was really, really, I guess like a reckoning time in a way. I wasn't sure if I was going to share this, but it does feel important. I lost my cycle for 14 months and regained it through lifestyle change and nutrition and really gathering with women. I started managing a community garden here, and there were just like a lot of things, some herbal support too. But eventually I bled again and felt like, oh, I want to take some time cycling to like get to know my period, loving it rather than, oh, like this is a hassle. So that was 11 months of like me being with me and my creativity and saying like, yes, my period is here. I'm going to rest. I'm going to just like say no, and this can wait, to other things that don't feel compelling right now. And then it all sort of like happened. We moved into a new apartment and like in a neighborhood next door, and um and we conceived, and that was fun. And so it was like this journey of us kind of consolidating our relationship and like our home and how like we want to interact with the people in our world. And I was doing a lot of artwork in that time, painting the walls, just painting everywhere, exploring foods, the preparation of local foods, getting to know like how do you harvest this, how do you um, prepare it, when is it available, what does it pair well with. And that was something that was ongoing kind of always, but that was like an outlet for my creativity then. And well, I'm not sure what else you're curious about in that moment.
Yeah, so it sounds like I think you mentioned that the conception was not planned. Is that true? Or
It
was it?
it was. I wanted to take a few months like with myself, and I did, and and we did really want, we really wanted to conceive.
Yeah, so then you were pregnant for that time. If you want to speak a little to pregnancy and then whatever you'd like to share about his birth?
Yeah.
Or how you prepared for birth?
The pregnancy, I felt really sensitive, of course, and um, really liberated because there were a lot of like social situations where I was like, I don't want to do that, and so I'm not going to. and, and there was also like this dichotomy of like, I don't need to people please, but also like, wow, like the other, like when you look the other direction, like what's there? It was really isolating, and I felt um just like everyone around me was so busy, and so like, and I could understand that, but like I needed human contact, like more like people around, and I was really kind of figuring out like um how to be okay when people were busy, or when plans fell through, or when things couldn't happen, or just like, oh, like the village is not here. Like I thought, these friends, these people would like fulfill those roles, but it's not as important to them as it is to me. Like at the end of the day, as much as they love me and care about me, and all the things, it's like there's still this texture that's missing. I hired a midwife, and I never really had a great feeling about her. But so like the whole pregnancy was really like coming to terms with like accepting her as she was, and feeling um like this was the only option.
Is
And
she a medical midwife or a like traditional midwife, or what would you?
well, that was also like really interesting to kind of figure out. Like, I'm in Colombia, she's calling herself a midwife, but what does that mean in terms of like compared to a US midwife? So that was also like gray, like a
Yeah.
gray area. And I know there's midwives who practice like traditionally sprinkled throughout the towns nearby, but not necessarily that they would be like offering those services
Mm-hmm.
paid to foreigners. So I know that she trained as a doula, and she also had been doing midwifery for about 8 years, but she was like the only one
Mm-hmm.
on the
Yeah.
clinic.
So
It
she
was like
felt like
that.
your only option. Yeah.
Um,
Is it common for women in Colombia to birth, at home, or do most women choose birth in the hospital?
it's not common at all. And in fact, if a woman gives birth outside of the hospital here, they treat it as if it's an emergency. If you end up in the hospital in the first 15 days after birthing, like as if you gave birth next to a river in some town that like there was no other, like there's the whole classism thing that goes on there for sure. But yeah, no, I was sure that I was not, did not want to end up in a hospital, especially not a Colombian hospital. And it was really the second birth experience that I could say, like, I really owned my experience and showed up for what I needed to show up for 100%.
But then how was the birth of your first son different than that? Or how would you describe that experience that wasn't showing up 100%?
Well, it was just the sense of I wasn't really sure. Like, of course, I had heard stories like, oh, okay, whatever happens, I could always just give birth and the midwife couldn't be here. Like, of course, that was in my consciousness for many years.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still searching for like information and like techniques and like curious, having never been around it before. And yeah, just like caught in that power dynamic with the authority figure, the midwife. The actual birth was at my home, as I had hoped. It was a Saturday, and I was just painting a pot that we were gonna plant the placenta in. After the quarantena, the 40-day rest period. And that could have started labor then. It was like a very dreamy day, like very just like, woo, here I am. I'm just painting and there's nothing else.
Yes.
But it wasn't really like once the sun went down, then I could feel like the whole surface of my skin, like all my pores were like open and like supple and like super like wow, like super sensual. I was just like, wow, I just want to like rub lotion on myself. And I just started feeling, yeah, like a wild animal, like walking around my apartment, just like smelling the air outside of the balcony and outside of the window. And it's getting late, so there's not a lot of people walking by anymore. Really wanting to make love. And so I did. And then after that, it was on. I was like, oh, okay, like this feels like kind of like a period cramp. Like, oh, like there's like a warmth in my womb, and so I called the midwife and she was like, oh no, those are just the practice ones, because it was actually like I was exactly term. It was still projected to, be like a few weeks before I would birth. And so I'm just like walking around my apartment out on the balcony, like looking at the moon. And then at some point I was like, oh no, like I told my husband, like, this baby's being born tonight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got into that. The thing that was really challenging was, well, I felt like the baby was emerging, and I felt afraid. And since I kind of already committed to having the midwife there and she was like on her way, I waited. And that was the most painful part. And when I was still like, oh, like I had this, like, oh, I'm gonna birth the baby now. I just need to know like XYZ. So I was like, Marcelo, call a midwife and ask her like how to put pressure on my lower back, that like in that class we took, she showed this technique, and so that he could do it, because it felt like my lower back was gonna like break apart. Like that was how intense it felt. Of course, I knew, okay, that's not going to happen, but it was so intense. I was like looking for some counter pressure, and she wouldn't tell him. Like she wouldn't tell us. She was like, no, just wait. So I got like locked into that like conflict. Go into the shower, relax, like put hot water, and we got a water heater because that's not a thing here. We got a water heater, but after like 90 seconds, it would go ice cold, like the circuit would short. So Marcelo is at the circuit breaker, like resetting it so it's hot and then freezing, hot and freezing. And I'm on a ball and I feel the head, and I'm like, just like, no, I'm so sorry, baby, but we have to wait. And so by the time they got there, she came with an assistant, an indigenous assistant, and she was really concerned. I was very cold, probably because of the cold water, and that was the indigenous woman was massaging me like the same as you would imagine like Chinese medicine, like massage, and that was like really, really helpful. But then the midwife was like saying, oh, okay, like now this is the contraction, and like there was no contraction, like so I was like, what, she's like making up a contraction but nothing's happening.
Must have been disorienting.
Yeah, they were trying to like rush it along.
So first they're telling you stop, don't, and then they're trying to like, yeah, wow.
Like, okay, now this is an emergency and we have to go now. And yeah, so when the contraction did come, I screamed so loud because I was so angry at her. I was yelling at her, but of course, you can't tell in that moment. And actually, and so after that, like as the next one was getting ready to come, she did say something like, now like we were just in it, like there's no other way, like here we are, we're in it. So she said something that did really touch my heart. And when the next one was like getting ready to come, she said, entregalo a la tierra, which is deliver them to the earth. So I was like, yes, that is what I'm doing. And so the next contraction came, and I just talked to baby. I said, okay, baby, this is the one. I felt the ring of fire, which was familiar because I was massaging and really like putting that pressure on. okay, there it is. The head came, and I exhaled, and the whole body just came right out into her hands. So that was the moment that I chose. And he was born, and it was like this slow arc that she lifted. It was like in slow motion, like lifting him up and onto my chest. I saw that it was a boy, and I was, holding him, but really shaking a lot, which now I understand is like the discharge from that experience. But yeah, I ended up being just like sitting on the midwifery chair in my birthing room, and my husband is on my left side, and he is, I can feel as the baby emerged, I can feel just like him, like his face in awe, like just following also this,
Yeah.
this.
I love the slow-mo description because it does just like that time when baby emerges, it feels different. Yeah. And then his placenta, how was that?
That was a continuation of the rush that they had started. So the assistant dug it out of me, and it was extremely painful.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything just felt like it was happening so fast. They were like, Marcelo, like, pick her up and bring her into bed. And then, like, I'm carrying the baby, and my husband's carrying me. And then there's the midwife assistant with the placenta in the bowl behind us. Um, and I don't know, I imagine like this moment, like I would just be like, oh, like I'm being held by my love, but I'm like worrying that like my head is gonna smack against like like a doorway or something, because he's sort of like, whoa, like what, like what's going on too? I'm being ordered around, like
Yeah.
um yeah, so they got me into the bed and rested for a little while.
Yeah, and you mentioned the quarantena. Is that the 40 days?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more you'd like to say about, yeah, his early postpartum?
Mm. Oh, there were just moments of pure bliss and love and connection, mostly with breastfeeding, that was like, wow, I have never felt this depth before, and was so in love with that, and so in love with my baby. And there was this like this bubble. There were a lot of challenges too, but there was like this bubble of right now, in this moment, everything is okay. And just going, from that one to the next
Beautiful. Mhm. Yeah, there really is that, or there can be that bubble. And lovely to hear you speak of that. And then your next son. How old was your first son when conception happened?
So this was last year in March. We conceived again. We wanted another child, and I was worried about the timing, and ultimately things turned out the way that they did. But the son was four, four, 4.5. And yeah, the pandemic has set us back a few years, but then something that did strike me during pregnancy is just how quickly even like he as 4 years old responds to like new boundaries and new needs and new realities. So I mean, things are just so configurable, like all the time, whoever we are, whenever, so asking like, oh, like the hugs need to be a little more gentle now. Like there's baby in the belly and, so kind of like really excited and kind of like settle down a little bit for that moment. And it was only like maybe 3 days that I had to like ask him or, remind him that then he would start approaching me like more gently. there were a lot of moments like that were very sweet. And there was just like a lot of momentum, a lot of things kind of rolling, and I think when we get pregnant, we kind of well, we have to pause, right? It slows us down, and then to look at like, oh, like where am I, and where do I want to be, and like how can things be, more in alignment for when that postpartum comes, when the next baby comes. So rolling along with the projects and resting a lot also.
And in what ways were you different, or is there a way to, I don't know if there's even a way to speak to that, but you were planning for a different type of experience this next birth, or?
Well, I knew that I was not going to involve a midwife. I was toying with the idea of like, do I want to just be completely alone, like in the dark, and like, or who would I trust to be in that space with me? And all of the prenatal visits that I did with my first gestation, I found myself taking so much time after to unwind and recenter myself that I decided, like, this is not something I'm going to do again. I can learn what I need to learn. I can live what I need to live, and find real support and care.
Yeah. And then this baby's, your second son's labor began early.
Yeah, it was 22 weeks. And I was not feeling well the day before Friday. And there was no idea that I would go to an emergency room and live that experience of I'm like struggling to find the right words, really, but that's just not something that I would be up for, that I would do.
You chose to stay home and
Yeah, assume whatever was going to happen. I was vomiting. I was then eventually feeling like cramping in my uterus, and I just felt really clear. Like if this baby is going to be born now, it is for some reason, as heartbreaking as it is, and I need to assume that. And I was in the bathtub, and I reached out to that assistant midwife that I had kept in contact with. When she came in the room, when I was birthing, that was the first time I met her, when I was birthing my son. I just felt this incredible groundedness. And like, I just knew, oh my gosh, like everything's going to be okay. Never met her in my life before. So I kept in touch with her. And when I felt like, I think this is what's happening, I called her mainly, like, I just wanted someone to know, like, hey, I'm about to go through this thing. I want someone out there to know, you know, for when I get through it. And so I told her what I was going through. I told her I was not going to go to the clinic. And she told me some, you know, some local remedies that I could do to help myself. And I told Marcelo how to make them, and he did that. But ultimately, I wasn't trying to reverse anything, trying to, you know, change something that I don't have the power to change. So I was actually in bed and trying to find a comfortable position, and really tense and afraid, not wanting to be losing my baby, but also like knowing I couldn't do anything about it. So what I had to do to open my body to birth was I had to open to death. I knew that that's what it was too early. And once that became obvious, I vomited on the toilet and felt the head. I realized there's no one who can save me, Kendra. Like, you are here and you can do this, but you have to hold it together. Like, you have got to stay focused and present and loving and just see this thing through. because that's how complications don't happen, when we believe that we can handle what we're handed. So as heartbreaking as it was, and I cried out, I was like, okay, like I know, I know what I have to do. I got my chest on the Pilates ball on the floor, and I just rocked myself until, I was ready, until it was the moment. Um, and I gave birth. And like you asked about the placenta, because that was such like at the forefront of like, remember the placenta, like that has to come too. I was still kind of like in that mode of like opening and softening, and it's not over yet necessarily, and really rocking with that, until eventually I did, turn around, and I saw that the whole sac was intact. So it was, in fact, complete. Um, I
But
called.
was your son in call then? You say the sac was intact, like you birthed your son with his placenta at the same time?
Yeah, like everything was
Yeah.
in the package together.
Yeah.
And really, that the experience, it was 4 hours, let's say, of like active labor. And that's the point in Dastan's birth when I felt like the baby is ready to be born. So
Mm.
in a lot of ways, like it was really healing for the first experience, because I had my agency and
Yeah.
my autonomy. And because of the stress with the hot water and whatnot, like Marcelo and I were not cooperating really well during the first experience. And this time around, like in between the happenings, the sensations, he was sort of in and out, and I was, saying like, I need this, or I need space, or, something would happen, and it would be like, what are we gonna do? And we were able to sort of like negotiate and like connect in those in between moments, until like another all-consuming sensation would come up, and it would just kind of like drop, and then on to the next thing. But it was like as supportive as it could have been, for like all the uncertainty, and like of course what's coming up for him with losing his baby. So I got onto the toilet, and I called him in, and he was just so heavy, like so thick and heavy. And I just looked at him and I said, "This is not your fault. I do not blame you." And it was so important for me to say that. We had gotten into an argument like a few nights before.
Mm.
So it would have been easy, right, for me to like blame. But and he was kind of like, he like really needed to hear that too. He was kind of like really? I was like, no, I do not blame you for this.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this is how you get the vaginal steam going. I'm like sitting on this immediately, and that's what I did. At this point, it was past midnight, and I was elated, honestly. Like I did it. Like nothing went wrong, and I was so afraid, but it felt like, okay, like I'm fine. I didn't need to. No one, no one needed to save me. I did this.
Oh, yeah.
I did my actions, and you know, exhausted and tender and all things. I remember the next day too, like the walls were like glowing. I was, wow, those stains on the wall that have been like bothering me for so long, they're so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh, I was just like looking at everything so differently. Like this thing over here that I've been so annoyed about, you know what? Whatever, I'm alive and we're all here. So
Wow. Mhm. Yeah. Are you open to sharing anything you might about what you did from there? Like, I'm not sure what with his body. I know you named him. Um, yeah. Is there anything you feel comfortable sharing about that?
yeah, so I was like after that steam, like really wanting to like, hey, let's just like go out back, do the burial, and then but Marcella was exhausted, so we decided to just sleep and do it in the morning. Um, we did that, and um, it was this really tender moment. And I want to I want to share this because um, I think it's so easy when something dark or difficult happens to just see that and nothing else. And um, but you know, my 5-year-old was standing right next to me when I was holding this wombling in our backyard, and um, you know, wanted to know like what's going on. And I needed to see more of the body, so I cut this out and I looked at the body, and um, and he asked me a few questions like, what is this, or why is this like that, and I shared he's not finished developing yet, um, and he like got over this edge of like threatening unknown to like, oh, like that's interesting. And then I'm just looking at this little being, and I just was like, que belleza. I just felt like so much beauty. Like my body fabricated this, and like all of those egg yolks that I ate and everything that I dedicated to, and like here it is, and this is going to nourish the earth now. And um I just kept saying like que belleza, and then you know we we buried the body. The son chose a rock, like a marker to put there, and we spent time. I mean, I guess I didn't mention this because it's like obvious to me, but we did the quarantine, of course. Like it was like the same postpartum, but just 3 months earlier. So chaotic in that sense because we weren't ready yet. But that was no question. Like I wasn't leaving the bed for those, for those days. Um, and in spending time with, he had just turned 5 at that point. Um, my 5-year-old, just like these like tender, heavy, sweet moments of like tears and all the things, and like like you tienes que buscar la belleza. You have to look for the beauty and like find something beautiful every day. And I said, have you seen something beautiful today? And he said, sí, el bebé. Yes, the baby. So, in that moment when I was having that feeling with the baby, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm gonna say something I want my son to repeat. It was just pouring out of me, and then this like ripple effect was like so beautiful to witness. And so we had this practice in quarantine of like pointing out beauty to each other and remembering, even though things were really different, like mommy's in bed, like there's all this stuff happening and not happening, this is like this commitment that we have that we're gonna do. There's just so much to be said, and then kind of land on the really, really essential bit.
Yeah.
So I did call that midwife, the assistant, who is a wonderful matriarch of an Arawak woman, comes down from the mountain. And I said, I really want you to take care of me. Like, can you come, please? Like, the baby was just born, I'm in quarantine. And she was like, I'm taking care of my family member. Like, let me see. It happened to be a holiday weekend, so she was able to like rearrange things. And when I got the news back that she was coming, I just cried and cried and cried. I felt so loved. She stayed with us for a few nights, introduced me to her niece who lives in the city. And I was able to tell her, like, hey, like, what was going on? Because in the first birth, this was like really horrible for me, and I didn't like that. And she listened. And she shared, what she thought that the other midwife was thinking and what she observed. So it was this sense of like full circle, and I felt like I could share with her, and I would be respected, and I was. She spent, it's like three days giving sobada, like traditional massage. She even kept trying to offer me like suero, how do you, like electrolyte fluid in an IV. And I was like, she's like, you're gonna feel so much better. And I was like, no, I'm going to, oh, but you didn't, no. And she respected everything, but
Yeah.
it was just like, it was a dialogue. It was an exchange. And I finally felt like, okay, like, wow, I did this. Like, it wasn't easy, and I still felt really loved by her and really cared for. So much love she gave my husband massages, and the son too. Like, it was this beautiful family care moment.
Wow. How special. How sacred.
I said, I just want you here as a wise woman and for loving touch. Like, and she told me stories, and she massaged me, and she listened, and it was like so nourishing. I did not want her to leave.
Oh.
I did not want her to.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, we
That's quick.
through the facilitator training together, and these skills that we talk about, that we experience, that we practice, like these women who came to me after this loss just embody those things. And I was like, this is circling. This is what we do as women. They haven't lost that yet. And it felt so, I mean, you can just feel it when you're in the presence of someone who behaves like that and moves like that and relates like that. So her, yeah, like her niece really wanted to, she just really wanted to come and like support me. And so she did. And then she came back in another week and we got to know each other a lot too. But it just felt like, oh, okay, like one thing is not here, but there's this other thing that is. And I feel like that's like kind of how we piece together mothering. Like we know all the things that are missing. We know all the things that are hard, but what are the things that are here that are really just like warming our hearts and like carrying us through? And how can we live so that we can honor those women who supported us when we needed it so much?
So glad that you had that woman and her niece there with you in that time. As we move towards a close, I was thinking maybe I would just share, I'm just going to share a little bit about how I know Kimberly or how I got introduced to her, and we can talk a little bit about MotherCircle and then we'll close here. But so for me, I just like birth and babies has been one of my lifelong passions and soul callings. And for me, it was when she published the fourth trimester book that she kind of came into my awareness and sphere, and I started following what she was doing and putting out into the world. And I had seen her, like talk about her Jaguar courses, but for whatever reason, I had this like hesitancy. I had my son was like 2.5, still young at that time. I didn't have that much. I don't know. I wasn't taking that much time. Wasn't that into online classes, honestly. And that's where they were. And I didn't feel called to it at that time. And then I was pregnant, and then the pandemic happened. My daughter was born in March of 2020, sort of like right as it was unfolding. And so then I saw that she was offering MotherCircle that like sort of spring, summer after my daughter was born. And that's when I felt like, okay, it's called MotherCircle. So it's like, okay, if I have like my daughter or my kids here with me on the call. For some reason, I felt like with the Jaguar ones, like I couldn't, even though I know I know now that it would have been okay. But at the time, that was the thing that drew me forward to commit and engage with her in this deeper way. And so I first did MotherCircle with her and just fell in love with Kimberly and the way that she teaches and works and shares and that material. And of course, MotherCircle also has like the Jaguar element of those female nervous system skills and awareness and knowing. And so after MotherCircle, I then have done several rounds of her signature Jaguar course. But I'm curious, I don't know when for you, like I know you and I have met, virtually in MotherCircle and in we both did her first MotherCircle facilitator training. And I'm curious for you, like what your journey was in finding her.
Yeah, totally. I just want to like slip in here before changing the topic too much. Like, I really felt like it was important to share the experience of like the birth of this loss and the honoring of the postpartum with the same 5 universal needs that we talk about in MotherCircle, because of course it's devastating. And I was like, at one point, I was like, I don't want to live. Like, I wanted this baby with me. I can't get out of bed. I don't want to. And I felt what that belief did to my system. It crippled me. And I had to make a choice. Like, yeah, you can keep repeating these thoughts, Kendra, or you can say this is what happened and you can decide to live. And when I decided to live, there was so much bliss available and pleasure even in that grief. Maybe because of it. But just like, these aren't things that should be swept under the rug. Like, people are like, oh, I'm not going to say that I'm pregnant because then if I miscarry, no one will know. It's like, well, you want everyone to know because they need to be bringing you soup and coconut water and like giving you hugs. Like, so, I mean, it's no different if there's a baby in your arms or not. And, that's why I felt really called to share. You know, there's no one linear experience, there's no one way, but there is this fullness of like all of it possible. I mean, for me, it meant like new connections with my ancestors and with prayer and all these things. But
you know, in Colombia, do they have a word like in the English language? We don't have a word for a mother whose baby has died or child has died before them. Do you know? Do you have a word right there?
for the woman or for the
Yeah,
baby?
you know, like if if your husband dies, you're a widow. But and if you're a child and your parents die, you're an orphan.
Yeah.
Or that's a label, right? A word in English, but in English we don't have a word for. I think it's in China, Chinese or Japanese. They do have a term for uh the parent, the mother whose baby or child has died. So just thought I would ask.
That's really curious. And because I'm a language nut, I'm gonna look into that and ask around and check that out. And I would love to take another minute at the end to share a little bit about that too. But as for what you asked, you shared your journey coming upon MotherCircle, and her book was published when I was pregnant. And the midwife actually mentioned it to me. So I had this awareness of like, she's like, Kendra's shadow is going to come out in the postpartum. Like, you've got to rest, you know? So that was really, I was appreciative of that. It wasn't like surprising. Like, I knew that I was going to be resting for those 40 days. But
Is that more common for women to rest those 40 days in Colombia than it is like in the US? Most women do not. But
it is a known practice, and there still are known, well, practices within that are in, you know, in the consciousness here. It's not spoken about a lot. It's not really valued, but you know, you'll say it, and especially older women, they're like, oh no, you can't cut your hair because you're in quarantine. Like, that's no good for the woman to cut her hair. You have to wait. Like, these little things will come up, and I find it so fascinating to just like talk and talk and talk with people and see what they know, like all this wisdom that's still like brimming here. Trying to honor your question though, coming back to that, is Oh yeah, so I knew like el cuarto trimestre, the fourth trimester came out. That's a thing. Good. But I was so like information overloaded. I was like, I don't want another thing to study. I don't want another thing to do. And that was kind of my stance for some years. And I was going to this very special support group after the pandemic started. I was here in Colombia for the whole pandemic. Um, and her name kept coming up, and like somatic practices and embodiment, and we did like little practices along the way. It was like a good year. I was going to this circle, and like no, I don't want something else to do. I've done it all. Like I learned meditation, all the, like just I'm exhausted. Like my kid wasn't even 2 when the pandemic hit. So, but eventually, and like you, like I've been teaching in real life since I was in college, um, and not really attracted to the idea of an online class. But then once the pandemic came and I had the possibility of contact with like something of a familiar culture to me through the internet, which was never available before. Like when I moved here, Google Maps wasn't a thing here. You just had to figure it out. You had to go and ask people and get lost and find yourself. So, oh, the glory days, right? but, um, but so I did end up taking a class with one of Kimberly's friends. And then after Kimberly's work, MotherCircle specifically being recommended to me like so many times. And then she was like, I can vet for her. I had this experience with Molly Carome, writing, birthing yourself. I can vet for her. It's starting next week. I was like, okay, like I will do it. I had so much resistance. I was like who does she think she is, like, and also impressed at the same time, like wow, like she's saying these things that I thought I had to keep my mouth shut about, like, and she's just saying it out there, and I was like, okay, maybe it's okay that I feel like this. And um of course intellectually we know, and oh yeah, of course, I'm a human, I have a whole spectrum of emotions. But when it's your child and you feel like more love than you've ever felt for this being than anyone else, but then you have also this rage and this grief and all of this stuff, it's like, what do you do with it all? Like how, like, and people weren't like really well receiving of that, and not like the people are not wanting to talk about how it's anything but amazing, which of course it is amazing, but it's also all of these other things too that really force us to grow. So I went through the first MotherCircle, and I was like really trying to suss it out. Like, is this worth my attention? Like, is this worth my like opening my heart to this way of feeling things, to this way of experiencing things? And I had this sense of like the things that I thought were reliable before weren't anymore. And it was just like this moment that I was ready and like, okay, she's she's been called an expert. I'm just going to trust. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see what happens. And um doing some of the this was 2021 when I joined for the first time, doing some of the like bodily explorations and like alignment, and just like having um little sound bits of like what can happen to our posture, and how we could do like micro compensations throughout the day. That was actually really powerful. And so I just kept coming back and doing those little things, or I would do the recording, and I saw results in ways that like venting and talking and following the rules and doing all these things just had not gotten me.
Mm-hmm.
Years, I really thought like, okay, this is how it's going to be like for the rest of my life. Like, this is just aging. This is just like, I'm exhausted. Now I'm a mom. And of course, there's love, there's that too. But now I feel like I have more strength in my body than before. And like, um, I can just like pick up this thing and go and like do things that I used to, be able to do that I felt so limited and like um, confused and fragile before. So it's also just been like this huge perspective shift of like, bring the aging on. Like, it's not just a downhill skid. It's like this beautiful cyclical journey that we have things that we look forward to in ways that we actually improve and become stronger. And then, yeah, there's also things that get more challenging. But I think the challenges get blown out of proportion in
Mm-hmm.
terms of with this.
Yeah, so yeah, like you, I had that resistance to the online way of gathering and circling, and yet I found it was such an anchor for me, especially at that time, but then also beyond that, like time where we were, stopped from being in the flesh with more people. But I've continued to return to MotherCircle and return to that material again and taken MotherCircle more than once because it's just such it's like a weave of feminine wisdom, nervous system awareness, and like that alive embodiment practice. And I feel like it has impacted my life in so many ways that I can't even fully describe. And then when the opportunity to become a facilitator of MotherCircle came through, I had already been leading, different types of circles, but there was just the course was so rich. And then I've led an online MotherCircle once so far, and I'm getting ready, like you, to start another one this September. And I love the way that they have crafted the material and the arc of the courses, the journey that we go on in MotherCircle, and how even with the same material, like each person teaching or facilitating is gonna, have their own flavor within that. And then how each person experiencing it is gonna, you know, experience it different each time. So I would love for you to share more about just, I know we're kind of getting to the end of my time availability, but I would love for you to share about your MotherCircle coming up, anything else you want to share about your MotherCircle, and where people can find you and follow you and sign up, anything like that.
Yes. Mm, so good. I have joined every circle since that summer in 2021. And when she announced she was doing the facilitator training, I just knew like this has changed my life so much. I have to do this. I love going to women's circles. I went before I was a mother and then a little bit, during pregnancy and beyond. But I wanted to be able to offer a more consistent experience here because there's amazing circles in Cartagena. But sort of the nature of the city is like very sporadic, and it's so powerful when we gather as women. Like you said, it's really, I feel it's so nourishing just for any woman, just this feminine wisdom, and particularly to learn like when I was pregnant, I was trying to find things about my body, and all I was finding about was baby, and like if it was a cabbage or a blueberry size or something. And I kind of gave up, like, oh, they just don't know about the mother's body, huh? And then I find Kimberly, and it's like, oh, here's the information in a digestible way. So yes, I will be leading starting Monday, September 9th, I think it is, 7 o'clock Eastern. I love an evening
7 p.m. Yeah.
the women's circle at night. And I'm really excited about doing it virtually. Of course, that's an edge for me, but to be able to bring the wisdom of those women here who cared for me, and to share really the warmth and the grit of this place, and so that can keep living as the pressures continue here and really everywhere to conform and chop move along. Is there anything else I want to?
Well, where do people sign up, and your social media?
Yeah. So you can follow me at MotherCircle Cartagena on Instagram, and you can email me at Shencaribe at gmail.com. So Cartagena is Cartag, and Shen is a Chinese medicine term, SHE.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'll definitely put that written out as well in the show notes so people kind of find it easily that way.
And if you are any of you listeners out there wanting to learn Spanish, I am trained in teaching, offering one-on-one language coaching to learn Spanish in like a very mothering kind of way, with somatic explorations, and no worrying about memorizing lists and that pressure, but really feeling comfortable making different sounds with your mouth and conversing. English as well, but I think most people here would be interested in the Spanish option.
Beautiful. Before I stop the recording, would you share what soul means to you?
Oh, it's this continuous inquiry, and actually Shen or Sen is this Chinese medicine term that has a lot of translations, a lot of meaning. It like morphs based on what you're talking about, which I feel like is applicable to the very theme of soul, but just this this essence, this sense, what moves you, what calls you, that will continue beyond the body. And it's this inquiry that's been like coming up in my system just recently, more of seeing how precious this like flesh is, like this experience of being able to have senses and perceive the world around us. And then like the immediate grief of like, well, when we die, how will we perceive this world? Like those senses are for us now incorporated, but I wonder what other senses or capacities could there be for a soul without being a body? Of course, we can't know, which is why it's a question to live with.
The great mystery of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time today, for sharing.
Much for your sweetness, your space holding.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Heart of the Soul. I would truly appreciate if you might choose to leave a rating, review, or share the show with someone that you know. You can support this podcast by donating to it using the PayPal or Venmo links. If you have stories that you would like to share on The Heart of the Soul, please send me an email through my website. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me, I have both one-on-one and group offerings, online and in person. Find out more on my website, birthingnova.love. If you're listening on Spotify, you can now even send me a voice message. Until next time, remember, be brave, be love, be wild, be you, because you are the only you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Sending each of you so much love. Love, love, love. Mwah.